My next guest is Wendy Cutler, Vice President at the Asia Society Policy Institute, former acting Deputy U.S. Trade Rep, did a lot of trade with Asia. And Wendy, welcome. Did you work on Mexico as well?
Not directly, but anyone at USTR had some input into the process through the years.
Yeah, it's all related. And I understand that the campaign trail issue is about China, and we can talk about that more in a minute. But just to stick for a moment on what Harris is saying in relations with China and the USMCA coming up for review, it's a very different political dynamic between the U.S. and Mexico now than there was even when this went into effect, because what's happening at the border is not just about the immigration issue. It's about crime that's been spilling over, the extent to which Mexico is in control of its country, and more people questioning whether we should allow free trade with a country who is not guaranteeing that security. So do you see a risk there where previously there might not have existed?
Yeah, I do think tensions with Mexico on the trade front and other issues are heightening. That said, I think they can be managed properly. There is a review of the USMCA coming up in July 2026. And I think whoever wins the presidency is going to put a big focus on this review of this agreement and request changes, particularly to Mexico, but perhaps even to Canada, to make the agreement more labor friendly and maybe environment friendly for the U.S. and make sure manufacturing doesn't leave the United States for one of the NAFTA countries.
Right. And I saw those comments from Trump recently. I think he was talking about John Deere and a 200% tariff if they move jobs to Mexico and whatnot. I mean, it does seem like this gives us some leverage, both the coming up, expiring of the agreement with Mexico and also the tariffs with China, which can now be used as an incentive, if you'd like, if we are trying to push them on bigger policy issues to say, you know, we could lower these in exchange for certain changes. Is that what they're meant to do? Or do you think this is just about revenue and growing domestic markets?
I think with Mexico, it is more about influencing their behavior. I think with China, the consensus is moving that China's doing what it is doing on the trade front, and it is subsidizing its industries, and it is picking champions. And frankly, it's dumping all its products around the world. And so I think when it comes to China, not only the U.S., but the EU and other countries are beginning to put in place tariffs to get ahead of the curve and to make sure that China isn't unfairly sending their products to our borders. And that's what these new targeted tariffs are about. They're not across the board. The Biden administration has spent a lot of time going through all the requests from stakeholders and has come up with a pretty targeted list of products that Megan had described, including clean energy products, steel, aluminum, personal protective equipment, and lithium-ion batteries and a few other products.
So what, Wendy, does it tell you, these stimulus measures that Beijing has announced this week, the monetary ones, the fiscal ones, big emphasis on the stock market, even though few Chinese citizens have a lot of exposure? I think I saw the number was something like 10%. What are they trying to do?
I think China is trying to turn its economy around. And as the end of the year gets closer and it becomes evident that without bolder measures, they're not even going to achieve their modest growth target of 5%, that more measures were needed. And that's what we saw this week. The immediate response is positive. But I think there's also a view that the measures announced so far are insufficient. More needs to be done. But that said, they have moved a lot this past week. A lot of folks wish they had done that a year ago, but they've done it now.
Right. Isn't that true? Wendy, thanks for joining us today. It's good to get your thoughts on this. We appreciate it.